Kristopher Lorren here. I'm here to do the defense of my white paper. So it's about corrections and natural disasters and emergency management. So I show it at the top here, the Arkansas Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, or ARCEMP, written by Governor Sarah Sanders of Arkansas. But just below that is the Orleans Parish Prison, or OPP. To the left is me on a rock on a mountain. The number one destructive natural disaster is flooding. Flooding comes from many forms: storms, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, rain. There's many different ways that flooding can come, and that's part of the factor why that it's the number one. Next, we could say that water could flow down that mountain, and it could literally just sweep me and that rock away, no matter how big that rock is. Another idea is that water could come and hit the OPP, or it could flood the OPP, inundate the OPP, and cause damage. It could destroy the New Orleans Parish Prison. Now, the Arkansas Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, or ARCEMP, has a very descriptive plan to actually evacuate inmates, staff, and their families from Arkansas Department of Corrections, or ADC. Now, here we have an aerial view. On the left-hand side, we got the McPherson unit, which is the correctional facility for women. On the right-hand side of that layout, we have the men's unit, or Grimes unit, correctional facility. The right picture shows and displays what it looks like inside of these correctional facilities, so that we got a good idea of what we are comparing to. So I'm here today to let you see these slides and defend this white paper, due to the fact that I've had experience in corrections, not necessarily on the good side. However, on the good side of it, I had the Associate of Science in Criminal Justice. I have the Bachelor in Criminal Justice, Criminology, and then I'm working on the Master's in Homeland Security and Emergency Management, with the focus on emergency management right now. Now, the guy on the left, he feels like these storms on the right, because we know that tornadoes are in hurricanes, are on their way there, and he is absolutely vulnerable and defenseless against this destructive storm. Consider the United States of America, its mass incarceration on approximately 2 million people are incarcerated, and consider the effect on each individual for those that are to receive either due process for a traffic ticket. There's those that are there for non-payment of fines, and they're there for serious crimes too, but they're immobile and they're stuck, so they cannot do anything. And this guy's just thinking, oh my goodness, here comes these storms, what am I going to do? And that's basically the way it was for the OPP during Hurricane Katrina, and we'll get into more of that in these upcoming slides. So here we see that we have the natural and fundamental risk. So Hurricane Katrina at OPP is a serious and just awful example of systemic emergency management and leadership failures. So the historical failures are that they have been a testament of the catastrophic destruction of Hurricane Katrina at the OPP, and it's a scary testament to the scenario. So a comparative analysis of the OPP emergency management deficiencies will be done to compare the ARCEMP, or Arkansas Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan for ADC, to discern best practices and identify areas for improvement in correctional EM strategy. So we need to develop paths of more effective and ethical EM strategies. That is our goal. This study is not just theoretical, but it is about saving lives, y'all, like literally saving lives, regardless of the circumstance, and to protect lives. So we need to examine and compare the errors and ethical and logistical failures and learn lessons. So over here at the top, front, we need to learn lessons from Hurricane Katrina at the OPP, because it's there at the top. You see the floodedness and you see what it looks like inside of those cells as opposed to the other units, the Grimes and McPherson units. So we examine the vulnerabilities of incarcerated populations due to continuous confinement during natural disaster. We examine and identify the best practices for improvement in correctional and EM strategies. Okay, and our focus is to preserve life. We want to do this because this defense paper is going to look at the vulnerability of these incarcerated populations and identify these best practices. So here at the top, we see a better glimpse of the picture. This is where at the end we had staff, their children, their wives, their husbands, those that worked there, administration, and they had to get out of there. So they had boats coming to pick them up to take them to another location. But that was not the original plan. It just turned into such a catastrophe that it had to be done. Okay, then we have the what is the core problem here? So we have to assess the adequacy of EM protocols in correctional facilities and natural disasters. And then our research goal was to determine if the current plans are sufficient to protect the inmate, staff, and the public. Now, the justification is due to the it's continuously increasing the frequency and intensity of natural disasters. It's happening all around us, and there's like absolutely plenty that we can do in our planning. It's in the ARCEMP, but there was so much failure in the OPP that we can learn from that and apply that to the ARCEMP and compare and contrast to figure out what needs to be done. Now, there's also a sense of urgency due to the New Madrid seismic zone, and so there's a seismic zone that runs through the state of Arkansas, and there needs to be a plan, which we have in the ARCEMP. So there is documentation of the OPP failures during Katrina, and the consequences continued to escalate without plans to protect these individuals that were incarcerated. So the ARCEMP prepares for various hazards through the use of resources for disaster preparedness as responders save lives and property while minimizing suffering during emergencies. So that's that's part of the core problem. So the methodological approach was deficiencies of the ARCEMP. So the real problem is that it lacks real world implementation. So there's actually no tested live disaster scenarios for the state of Arkansas in correctional facilities. So there's a gap also in knowledge and in the practical application. Even though we utilize qualitative, comparative, and secondary research to create this case study and comparative analysis, it's still, and it's grounded. It's grounded in research-driven correctional policy development with a qualitative comparative research design. But it still does not give the knowledge gap does not provide knowledge for that gap through a practical application. So how do we get a practical application? We look at these pictures and we compare what they look like after the initial shutting down of the OPP. And this was after they kind of cleaned it up and made it look a little bit nicer. Okay, and then we have the legal and human rights perspectives. So the Constitution and the statutory obligations protect incarcerated and individuals, as Hurricane Katrina exposed these systemic breakdowns in the criminal justice system. And through these displays of vulnerabilities, they failed to exercise planning and training practical applications. So there needs to be an enforcement of legislation. For instance, the ADA, the Rehabilitation Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the prevention methods to stop this discrimination against vulnerable populations. Just because somebody made a bad choice in their life doesn't make them a bad person. Okay, so here we have the sheriff of the OPP in this part. He says, basically he says on national television, it's even hard for me to say because it's so grotesque and inhumane. He says they need to stay where they belong. So he just left children, adults, and these inmates and the staff stranded in flooded waters. And while he was being interviewed, he made this horrific statement, and he just refuses to evacuate. So we see here on the bottom where they ended up when they took them in those boats and sometimes helicopters. So what was the mental effect? Besides the lack of ethical considerations, that was very evident. It was a direct violation of fundamental constitutional rights as well. But look at these guys just sitting out here, just exposed to disease and a lack of nutrition. And this is completely inhumane, and they end up here. This is the result. Now, they do end up getting them to certain facilities, but they're like I said earlier, there was people that had, they were there for due process, due to traffic violations. There was those who didn't pay their child support, and there was people there for murder that have been sentenced to life. But the point in saying all that is they were all in this same place together, and then they were scattered abroad. And in the criminal justice system, it was broken. So this pattern led to them scattering these inmates. And of course, the staff got to go home, or to a home, and the inmates were scattered all over the jails and in prisons or correctional facilities all throughout the state of Louisiana. So here we have Governor Sarah Sanders. And we found that the deficiency in correctional emergency management plans and the ARCEMP displayed weaknesses in the practical applications of these specific protocols that are wrote down. It's one thing to write it down, but it's another thing to put it into action. So the unique evacuation challenge of large controlled populations, security level and safety, and the medical needs of inmates must be considered along with the logistics cost and public safety. Now, I request that Governor Sanders, either through their kiosk virtually in their barracks, those barracks that I showed you earlier in the ADC, they could do the training virtually, and then she needs to send in professionals in emergency, Arkansas Division of Emergency Management, from there to train these individuals, to prepare them through programs like IPAWS or CERT teams. CERT teams would be a great idea. Let's get 10 men from each barracks. Let's get 10 women from each barracks, and let's train them with clear communication, coordination protocols, and resource allocation, and give them the right to human safety. And let's allow the detainees to work with the staff and the correctional officers to help escort people to a specific private place. Now, this information could not be made public because the public safety concern. However, it could be done without the cruel and unusual punishment that we've seen in the OPP. This strategy decreases, it actually increases the safety of all individuals. So, in conclusion, this white paper defense asserts that the safety and security of incarcerated individuals during natural disasters are needed. And by analyzing the past failures of the OPP, the research contributes to the development of a more effective action-driven strategy for emergency management. We need all of those that are associated with corrections to get involved and help train these stakeholders or inmates that are involved in corrections. This is by implementing these recommendations, the Arkansas Correctional Emergency Management capabilities will ensure, enhance, and confirm the safety and well-being of all individuals. So let's go on. Kristopher Lorren here to sign out. Let's go on to the reference page. And these are the references. And again, thank you.